So for quite a while now, I've been using a Sony A7R II as my main camera, and the cage that I used for that is a Smallrig cage that I found on eBay for pretty cheap. And that's been fine, and it's worked well for what I've done, but recently I've moved over to a Sony A7IV, and I just picked up a cage for it, because I needed to buy a new cage since the camera is a bit different, and the old one wouldn't fit, so I had to buy a new cage, and I went for the more expensive Smallrig Rhinocerous cage kit. And so I wanted to talk about it in this video because I know that when I was looking at getting this cage, I was definitely eyeing the cheaper basic Smallrig option because it was significantly cheaper. I think it was about half the price. I wanted to go over whether or not it's maybe worth it for you to spend a bit more on this camera cage. Or maybe you should just save your money and go for the cheaper Smallrig one. Right up until I actually took it out of the box and put it on this camera, I was hesitant and I really wasn't sure if it was quite worth the extra money that I spent on it, but honestly, it solved problems I didn't even know I had with my old camera cage. I mean, the first one obviously is just how much smaller this is. I mean, I'll show some side-by-sides, but this is just so much more well-fitted to the camera. It's so much smaller, it's significantly lighter, and it still adds nicely to the grip of the camera, and still adds all the functionality that you'd expect a camera cage to add. And so that's probably the first and biggest way that it improves over the other camera cage, is that it's going to be small, it's light, and it fits the camera really well. It doesn't make it more difficult to get to these buttons here by covering them up, and it's still fairly protective and rigid, and it's very solid for what it is. Not only does it shrink the form factor, bring down the weight, and still retain all of the functionality that you'd expect, it actually adds some. So one of the great things is that you have an Arca Swiss plate directly on the bottom of this. That's not something I had on my previous cage, and that is super helpful. But another similar thing is that you get a NATO rail right on the side here, so you can just directly attach any NATO accessory right onto the side. This is super helpful. I really wish this was on the top, but I know that that would have made it a bit taller, so I'm fine that it's not there. So this cage also just feels more well thought out compared to my other cage. The other one just feels like a basic metal slab that you put the camera inside of. This one feels very well fitted to the body, and it adds to the grip really nicely. It feels designed to be used, not just in a full rig where you wouldn't even touch it, but in real world use where you would just use it as is, like I have it now. So like little things, like the fact that you have this piece that can move away for the battery plate to open, and then you can still put it back so you still get that grip for your pinky. And like that's one of those little details. I mean, you've got like a really nice tool here to tighten the plate, as well as all these little screws right here. And just little details like that are really well thought out, and those are the types of little things that I didn't really see much of on the more basic cage that I have currently, and the one that I looked at that was cheaper for the A7IV. So another great thing about this specific Rhinoceros cage is that you do get an HDMI cable clamp with it. Because it's full-size HDMI, I'm a little less concerned about having to have a clamp on it, but it's still really nice to have that. One thing to be aware of is that if you have that clamp there, it is just another piece that's on the side. So if you have a side handle over here, it might just be another thing that gets in the way. So I'm not sure how much I'll actually use the HDMI cable clamp, just because it might get in the way, and I don't really want to use it if I just have the camera like I have it now. So we'll see if I'll actually use it or not. But it is a really nice option to have, and it comes with the cage, and so you can use it if you want. Otherwise, if you don't want to use it, you can always take it off, which is really nice. So another one of the great things is that it doesn't twist within the cage, because I know that that was a problem I had with my previous cage for my A7R II, is that the entire camera would actually twist ever so slightly within the cage just as you moved it back and forth. And so if I had my follow focus pressing against the lens, it would actually turn slightly, and that it misaligns the entire rig, and it's really weird to use that way, so it didn't quite feel as secure, and I never liked that. But it's not a problem that I really noticed until I realized that this one is perfectly secured within here. There's a separate piece to attach to the side here where the camera strap would go, and so that and then this handle bit just keep it from twisting within the cage. Have you ever been interested in taking your video editing to the next level? Audio.com is a subscription-based platform that licenses music and sound effects, and you can use them in your edits. This is super helpful because they have a fantastic library of all of this, and you can find exactly what you need. They come in at an affordable price, and they have this really cool feature called Link Match AI. Say you have a copyrighted music track on YouTube that you want to pull inspiration from, you can put the URL in, and maybe you even want to exclude the vocals, and then you can search and it'll find similar tracks. And this will get you pushed in the right direction to finding the music you want to use for your edit. They come in at a very affordable price, and on top of that, my viewers get 70% off their first year of Audio Pro by using my affiliate link down below and the code. That's at the very top of the description, so go check that out if you're interested. So the biggest reason that I really prefer this cage over my previous one and over the cheaper Smallrig one is that it looks nice and it's small and light. So that, along with the Arca Swiss plate directly on the bottom, those all allow me to use this cage all the time. I still have areas to put camera straps right on the side of the actual cage itself as well, so I can still put camera straps on this, and I can still use it as is. It's not super bulky and super heavy with the camera cage, so I feel very encouraged to use this even when I don't have the camera fully rigged up. And so the great thing about this cage is, between always having a tripod plate on the bottom and it not really interfering with the grip or the size and weight and fitting it in my bag, those things allow me to just always leave the cage on this camera. And I think that is worth the extra money, because I can just always have the cage there. I always have a tripod plate here. It looks much nicer and it still protects the camera really well without adding a ton of bulk or weight to the setup. And that is a problem I did have that I didn't even realize I really had with that other cage. But it did lead to me hardly ever using the cage with the camera unless I was going to fully rig the camera, because I had to have a cage because you need all the ports on it. You need all of the spots to put screws in so that you can actually attach everything. And so for me, that made it worth the extra money. The ability to just always use the cage no matter what, that to me is worth the extra money. I want to be able to use the cage outside of the rig, and I think that it's really nice to not have to always take the cage off every time I pull the camera out of the rig. It's one less step I have to take. And also, having a tripod plate in here, I might in the future be able to look at getting a quick release plate to put on the base plate of my rig so that I can just clamp it straight into the rig rather than screwing in base plate screws every time I put my camera in. So that's another thing that's really nice, that just really slick and easy to just keep the camera cage on the camera and always use it like this, which is awesome. And so ultimately it was worth it to me because I knew that I could just always use the cage, and that's what I want the cage to be there for. Let me know if you think it's worth it. Would you spend the extra money to be able to use the cage more often and not have it get in the way, or do you think it's maybe not worth it and you should get the more affordable option that will still serve largely the same purpose? Let me know down in the comments below. Otherwise, that's all I have for you today, so have a great day and happy shooting.